Amy sat with her mouth open, staring at her childhood friend. Finally, she blinked a few times and tried to speak. I, I, you're kidding, right? Tears streamed down Jane's face, and she took Amy's hands in her own. Please, Amy, I'm sorry I said anything. Please forgive me. Please don't hate me. Please don't hate me. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Amy shook her head, trying to recover from the shock. Her best friend, the person she shared every detail of her life with, had just asked her to give her a weekend away with her husband. Amy's overwhelming emotions made her dizzy. She agonized over the realization that she was about to lose her best friend to an illness that was slowly consuming her. Last week, Jane tearfully informed Amy of the doctor's devastating findings. Amy promised to do everything she could to make her friend's last months of life as good as possible. Oh God, Amy, please, I shouldn't have said anything. I was just being selfish, feeling sorry for myself. Please forgive me. Jane, I didn't realize you felt that way about David. Have you ever? God, no! David would never cheat on you, and I would never betray you like that. Have you talked to him about it? No, he has no idea how I feel about him. Oh, Amy, I've lusted after him from the moment you first introduced him to me. He's the best guy I've ever known, and that's why I never got married. The others just couldn't compare to him. Amy just gawked at her friend. Sure, I knew you liked him, but this? How could I have been so blind after all these years? Jane hugged her longtime friend. I guess at first I thought I just really liked him, but in the last few years I've realized that I have much stronger feelings for David. But he's your husband, so I've had to fight those feelings and keep my distance. Suddenly, Amy gasped and pressed her hand to her mouth. Oh my God, all those times we talked about sex, I told you everything. Jane couldn't help herself and giggled lightly. Yes, I was horny after each of those conversations. I was so jealous of you and what you have with David. God, I loved hearing you talk about him, imagining it was me in your bed with him. Jane, said Amy, but couldn't contain the mischievous smile that appeared on her face. You're so bad. Jane squeezed her hands. I'm sorry, dear. I know how pathetic that sounds. I tried to find a guy like your David, but I never could, and now my time is coming to an end. I was feeling sorry for myself, and then I got this crazy idea. Jane, No, it's okay. I mean, how stupid is it to ask your best friend if you can borrow her husband for the weekend? What was I thinking? Jane, I love you like a sister. You mean everything to me, but I'm not sure I can do this. I know. That was stupid of me. I forgot to ask. Besides, I'm sure David would never agree to it. Amy was silent for a moment as more questions raced through her mind. Would David agree to it? Does he have secret feelings for Jane? Will one weekend with Jane change the way he feels about their marriage? She shook her head and came back to the present. Okay, I'll ask him about it. If he says no, then that's the end of it. If he says yes, then I guess I'll have to make a decision. Now it was Jane's turn to look at her best friend. Really? I'm not sure how he'll react. I know he only thinks good things about you, but this is a big deal. Give me a couple days to discuss it with him. Jane grabbed her arm. Wait! Amy, please think before you say anything to him. I sure as hell don't want to be the cause of a rift between you two. If you think he'll get angry or hurt, forget it, don't ask him, and we'll keep it between us, okay? Amy hugged her favorite friend. That's why I love you. Even now, you'd rather give up on yourself than see me hurt. The friends hugged and cried, and then Amy said she would take her time and think about what she should do next. For the next 10 days, every possible scenario ran through Amy's mind. She loved Jane, but did she have to share her husband with her? Would she be able to live with the consequences of giving David a gym pass? Would he even want to have sex with her best friend? What if sex with Jane was better than sex with her? What if he got mad at her for even asking him about Jane's idea in the first place? God, what a mess. Amy made Dave's favorite dish and planned to ask him about Jane as they cuddled in bed. Halfway through dinner, she received a phone call. Jane's sister informed her that Jane was gone. She had suffered a sudden stroke. Jane was home alone that evening and died before she could be loaded into an ambulance. Amy was devastated and cried through the entire funeral. After the funeral, David tried his best to comfort his grief-stricken wife. With her arms around her, Amy mourned for her lifelong friend, and David quietly told her, "I know it's awful, but at least she had time to say goodbye to everyone and didn't have to suffer a prolonged death. She was your best friend, and we both loved her. I wish there was something else we could have done for her before she died." With tears in her eyes, Amy kissed her husband. "She loved you and really cared about our happiness. After all, I'm sure she knew we would do anything for her because that's what best friends do." "Of course we would." A week later, David turned to his wife as they sat down to dinner. "Okay, that's enough. You've been acting like a space cadet lately. What's going on in that beautiful head of yours?" Amy raised her head in surprise when her husband spoke. She replayed in her mind again the conversation she'd had with Jane. She blushed thickly. "Oh, nothing. I was just thinking about Jane." David studied his wife. From the way she blushed, the way she stammered, he realized she was not telling him something. What could she be hiding from him that made her blush? "So what's up with Jane? What's bothering you?" "Well, oh my God. Amy, just tell me what's bothering you." Amy took a deep breath and exhaled slowly, calming herself down. She took a long drink from her glass of wine. "Okay, I'm not sure if I should say anything because it's really controversial right now, but 2 weeks before Jane had her stroke, she asked me for a favor." "A favor?" "Yes, and what was that favor?" "Well," she asked, and then she told me to forget about her request because she realized she was probably asking for too much. She was dying, but we thought she still had a few more months before things got bad. I was shocked at what she asked for, but we talked about it, and I told her I'd think about it." "Jesus, Amy, you don't make any sense. Just tell me what she asked you to do." "You, David. She asked me to let her take you for the weekend." David's mouth dropped open, and he stared at his wife in disbelief. His mouth worked, but no words came out. Then he slowly pulled himself together, and his face hardened. "Bullshit! This isn't funny. Why are you avoiding telling me what's really bothering you?" Amy shook her head, then stood up and walked over to David. Reflexively, David pushed his chair away from the table, and Amy sat on his lap. Stroking his face, she said quietly, "Baby, I'm not lying. Jane confessed to me that she was in love with you and wanted to spend the weekend with you before she died. She knew it was a lot to ask, but she knew I would understand that she was no threat to us because she was dying. She carried a torch for you for years and wanted to make love to you before she died." "Oh my God! What did you say to her?" At first I was too shocked to answer. It took me a few minutes to pull myself together, and apparently my delay scared her a little. She started apologizing and asking me to forget about it. She was crying, and I was crying too. It was really embarrassing. I mean, I love her, she was my best friend, and I swore I would do anything to make her last days the best of her life. I just never thought she'd ask for my husband." Amy studied David's face. "Did you know? Did you know how she felt about you?" "Yeah, well, I knew she loved us both, but she never hit on me or anything. Oh, we flirted all the time, you know that, but no. I had no idea she felt that way. Hell, it just hit me. She said that's why she never got married. She could never find a guy to compare to you. She was hiding her true feelings. My God, I even talked to her about sex and stuff, and not once did she even hint that she wanted to be with you." "Damn. So what did you say? You agreed to forget about it?" "Oh, I get it. She made you promise not to tell me." "No, I told her I'd think about it. I promised her I'd think about it, and then I'd ask her if you agreed to it." "But you never did?" "No, I didn't. I didn't know if I could, and when I decided I should, I didn't know how to ask you. I was afraid. I wasn't sure I could handle your answer." David put his arm around her. "Honey, I'm sorry you had to go through that, but she's gone now, so it doesn't matter." "I know it shouldn't matter, but I need it resolved in my mind. Please, David, I promise not to get upset. But tell me what you would say." David looked into his wife's concerned eyes. "You can't let it go, can you?" Amy shook her head. David took a deep breath and slowly exhaled. "Well, it's just a hypothetical right now, so I can't know if my response would be the same when it has real consequences." Amy threw him a perplexed look, and David continued. "I mean, now that she's gone, things have changed. I can easily say yes because I won't have to act. On the other hand, if I say no, I can take it easy because she's not around, so she won't be hurt by my refusal. Like you said, it's a moot point." Amy nodded in agreement. "Yes. But I still need to know, and I want you to give me an honest answer, not just what you think I want to hear." David shook his head. "Damn! I think this exercise could be dangerous. Are you sure we need to discuss this?" Amy paused briefly, then nodded to David. David sighed obediently. "Okay. Let's get started. I guess I assumed you agreed that you wanted me to do this, otherwise you wouldn't have asked me. I guess you decided you wanted to give Jane pleasure even if it hurt you. We both loved her and were terribly worried about what was happening to her, but if I had agreed to do it, I should have thought, what would it do to us and our marriage?" Tears ran down Amy's cheeks as she remembered the grief she had felt watching her friend fall ill. She tried desperately to do anything that might give her friend a little bit of joy before she died. "I just wanted her to be happy, even if it was just a weekend. I know, honey. You're such a loving person, that's why Jane was brave enough to ask you for that favor. It was too much, and I guess Jane eventually realized it was too much." "So you would have said no?" But, I was sure you would say yes. Jane was my best friend. How could I deny her her dying wish?" "Baby, this was a chance for Jane to fulfill a fantasy she created in her head. Hell, we could have been awful together. But in her fantasy, it had to be spectacular. She had nothing to lose and no long-term consequences, but for us, it was forever. If we did this, you might feel better for a while. But what happens then? Long after it happened, would you regret it? Would you become resentful of me? Would you become resentful of what I did and feel like you needed payback? If you demanded a hall pass, would I be able to refuse? For Jane, it was one weekend, something on her wish list. But for us, it would have been for the rest of our lives. Yes, it could have worked out well, but it could have been a disaster. In the end, I would have done what I thought was right for my best friend. You." Amy hugged him tightly and sobbed into his chest. "Thank you, baby." Amy felt relaxed and soothed as David hugged her. She realized that she was haunted by guilt. She had talked herself into agreeing to Jane's request, but deep down she despised the idea. If she really was her best friend, Jane wouldn't try to take advantage of their friendship. Amy decided to believe that it was Jane's illness that allowed her to demand too much from her friend. She would always remember Jane as a really good friend. But David was right. Her husband was her best friend, and she vowed never to forget that.